The Lib Dems and the Conservatives have 2 tables set aside for their votes. Labour, well, they have 4. Perhaps that speaks volumes about the result expected here this evening. That's not expected, though, till about 1 o'clock tomorrow morning. But there is a Labour majority expected. But it will just be interesting to see how big that majority will be at the end of the evening. But the story seems to be here this evening of a low turnout by the electorate here in Sedgefield. Emily.
Danny, thanks very much indeed. Now over to Joe Coburn in Ealing Southall. Been a pretty controversial campaign there already, Joe.
Yes, it has. It's had everything. Defections, counter-defections. The internal politics here have been rife. And perhaps crucially, we've seen all the high-profile politicians here from all 3 main parties come to Ealing Southall, because this is a test of all 3 leaders, not just Gordon Brown, but David Cameron and Sir Mingus Campbell. What's looking like happening here, some gloomy faces amongst the Labour contingency. Their 11,500 majority could be slashed to just a couple of thousand. And the predictions are that the Liberal Democrats are coming in behind them with a surge in the last few days. That would be very disappointing for David Cameron. He's made this a very personal campaign here in Ealing Southall. He came here himself 5 times. He'd certainly want a better result than coming in 3rd again.
Joe Coburn, thanks.
Let's take you now to Sedgefield, to our political editor Adam Boulton for that second by-election, no doubt also being somewhat overshadowed by the Cash for Honours inquiry, Adam.
Yes, indeed, although I'll just fill you in on what's going on here in Sedgefield. This, of course, was Tony Blair's seat until he resigned on giving up the premiership. A protege and local man, Phil Wilson, is standing for Labour here, and you might get some indication of what they're expecting here tonight from the way that they've laid out the tables down there. You can see there in front are the 2 tables for, on the right, the Conservative Rob, and on the left, the Liberal Democrat Stone. And then behind that, double the size, is the table for Phil Wilson. Now, Labour have held this constituency for nearly 70 years, and I have to say I've yet to speak to anyone here tonight who expects an upset in that, although there are some interest in the contest. Battle for second place between the Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives. The Liberal Democrats would certainly hail a result if they were able to overtake David Cameron's Conservatives. Also, some speculation that the British National Party, the BNP, could do well here tonight in their terms, possibly saving their deposit. They did well in the local elections. And of course, if they, as a party opposed to immigration, were to do well, that would cause a lot of concern to the mainstream parties if they were to get a significant vote. But as you say, really tonight, I think if there's drama in the by-elections, it's more likely to be back in London with Jon Craig at Ealing Southall. Here, really what we're seeing is the end of the Blair era, one of the reasons why I came here. And of course, it would be a very positive end to the Blair era indeed if his protege were to be elected in his old constituency and effectively his name were to be cleared. Now, I've been listening to the reaction to our belief that tomorrow the Crown Prosecution Service are going to announce that they're not going to be prosecutions against the 3 people in the frame, Sir Christopher Evans, Ruth Turner and Lord Levy. Really, I think we can draw several conclusions from that. Certainly, questions will be asked about the police inquiry, although I suspect the questions will be less about the police inquiry than the length which it dragged on and the way in which it was handled in terms of the interviewing of suspects. There is undoubtedly going to be an issue about the way in which parties are funded, and certainly there's also going to be an issue about the link which all the people we've been talking to tonight accept is there de facto, if not necessarily de jure, between donors to political parties and those people who receive honours. Those really are the 3 issues going to be coming out of this. And there's going to be a 4th issue, and that's really what we're doing right now. The fact that this very serious police investigation appears to have been so porous, that there have been so many leaks and what has sometimes looked like and attempt to use the media to put pressure one way or another on the way the inquiry is going. And bearing in mind that this is a very serious inquiry against the highest in the land by senior officers of the Metropolitan Police, that too, I suspect, is going to be something which will concern the Public Administration Committee when it starts conducting its investigation into this affair.
Let's just pick out some of the individuals involved. We've heard from Lord Levy's office that the peer won't make any comment until we get the official announcement tomorrow. But he was certainly one of the first high-profile names which came to the fore in this investigation.
Yeah, Lord Levy, I think, is, if I can use the phrase, probably the sexiest figure involved in this particular inquiry, in the sense that even before Cash for Honour's inquiry came up, he was a very controversial figure as an independent businessman and a personal friend of Tony Blair, who not only took up the task of fundraising, which inevitably to a certain extent involves power broking, but it was also given an official role as the Prime Minister's envoy to the Middle East and indeed to Latin America. That made him a lot of enemies. A lot of people thought he wasn't a professional diplomat or a professional politician, and that he was swimming in waters that were possibly too deep for him. That said, he has, throughout this inquiry, maintained his dignity, maintained good humour, and always been quite frank that he didn't really know what the police were up to. The other two figures in the inquiry, Ruth Turner, the Prime Minister's third Director of Government Relations. By definition, her job would involve a certain amount of liaison, both with Michael Levy and with potential donors to the Labour Party. Relatively young woman who's clearly been put under a great deal of pressure, and as we were hearing from Stephen Pound, on one occasion treated very, very controversially by the police in terms of being woken up early in the morning and arrested and questioned. And then the third figure, probably the angriest at the moment, Sir Christopher Evans, a successful scientist, an industrialist, someone who's been an advisor to the government in those areas, who feels, frankly, that he's been traduced by the suggestion that he would do anything improper to gain a peerage. And all three of them and their families have been put under a lot of pressure. Now, we've heard a lot tonight about the duration of this inquiry and how the police will be angry if they don't think there are any prosecutions that come at the end of this. Let's remember that the police are not the Mounties, that they don't always get their man, that everyone they arrest is not always convicted, and particularly in this area of alleged white-collar crime, where no one is burgled, no one is physically harmed. It is a notoriously technical area and notoriously difficult to bring convictions, as anyone who's followed high-profile fraud cases would know. So the Crown Prosecution Service, in deciding whether this case should go to court, they have to take all of that into account. And I don't think it's necessarily fair for people to assume, well, you know, the establishment have decided that they don't want to see an ex-Prime Minister in the dock. The fact of the matter is that in these cases of white-collar alleged offences, the level of proof has to be pretty convincing before all the time and all the turmoil of a prosecution is embarked on. And I've been told that by people involved in the legal profession, some obviously sympathetic to Tony Blair, but frankly some of his most vehement critics in the legal profession have said to me for some months now that they didn't see a basis for this prosecution to come about, and that they were concerned by the duration and the extent of the police inquiry, particularly once it moved out of the phase of looking into the original offences to do with cash for honours and transparency of donations, into the secondary issues, although very important ones, of conspiracy to pervert the course of justice, i.e. effectively not cooperating fairly with the police inquiry. And there has been a lot of concern about this in legal circles dating back into last year.
OK, you've explained what a difficult case it is, but where does that nonetheless leave the Deputy Assistant Commissioner at Scotland Yard, John Yates? Will there be questions about his role in all of this, do you think?
Well, definitely there'll be questions launched. I think it is open to question how much Mr. Blair and Michael Levy and his colleagues will want to vent any resentments they may have on this. They may decide that the wisest counsel is to maintain a certain degree of circumspection and not stir this matter up. Certainly that's what senior Conservatives are hoping. But in the end, one can always fall back in these cases on everybody did their job. It was perfectly legitimate for Mr. McNeil to lodge the complaint with the police. It was a question whether the police proceeded with the inquiry, but once they did, one would expect the investigating officer to pursue that inquiry with vigour. Likewise, it is the job of the Crown Prosecution Service to decide whether they think there is a basis for a prosecution. And I'm not a legal expert, I don't have the figures, but it is not uncommon for the Crown Prosecution to review a dossier and say, we don't think this is sound enough to justify the expense of a prosecution in a whole areas of criminal justice, not just in this one case.
Adam, thank you very much indeed. No doubt we will have more from you from Sedgefield and also from Ealing Southall as the night wears on. As you say, Ealing Southall, too close to call, but Adam Boulton already wandering off to go and talk to some more people. More people I've got with me here as well.
Nothing.
Thank you both very much.
Nobody.
Yeah. Gentlemen, hold your fire if you don't mind. We'll come back to you very shortly. Let's just take you to Ealing Southall. Jon Craig is standing by. John.
Well, Anna, the latest soundings here are that Labour are just ahead of the Liberal Democrats, who are having a bit of a surge, and we think the Conservatives are in third place. Now, if that is the case, that's bad news for Mr Cameron, quite good news for the Liberal Democrats. We think Labour are just about clinging on, but early days yet. With me, however, is the Liberal Democrats' Chief of Staff, Ed Davey MP. I want to ask you first, if I may, about cash for honours. Your leader has, Sir Campbell, has been quite critical of Tony Blair, I think, in a statement he's issued this evening. What do you think about the fact that the police appear to have recommended, the Crown Prosecution Service appear to be recommending no charges? You've been critical of the whole process.
Yeah, well, we've said all along that the best way to learn lessons from this whole sorry episode is to reform party political funding once and for all, and to reform the House of Lords once and for all. And if you make those major reforms, I don't think we'll ever end up in this situation again. Let's remember, this undermines political life in this country, and that's not good for democracy. It's not good for the way we govern our country.
Do you think that, I mean, the fact that the Prime Minister's been cleared here, makes some of the criticisms you've been making rather invalid now?
Not at all. The police were making an investigation. They had to do that thoroughly. And I think they had support of everyone in order to make sure that, that the right questions were asked and then hopefully answered. But let's remember, Mr Blair came into Downing Street in 1997 saying he was going to be whiter than white. Unfortunately, the way he interpreted the rules that he himself brought in and allowed political parties to have loans to fund their election campaigns, which is very much against the spirit of his own rules, I think meant that he didn't deliver on that promise. That's why Liberal Democrats have called throughout this process to reform party political finance and to reform the House of Lords.
But you've got rich donors, just like any other political party. Surely all the parties are just in the same category here.
Well, if you declare publicly your donations to you and the loans to you, exactly how you finance your political campaigning, there isn't a problem. However, I think we need to now go further than that. I think we need to put limits on donations to political parties by individuals and by organisations. I think if we did that, I think we'd have a much cleaner political process. I think the respect could be put back into politics, and that's what Liberal Democrats want to do.
But what about the inquiry now that the Public Administration Select Committee is going to hold? Would you like to see police called before them and a wider inquiry by Parliament?
Are you talking about inquiry into what? Into
An inquiry into cash for honours, the whole police inquiry, the whole process?
Well, I think the police were between a rock and a hard place. They were damned if they didn't investigate this properly and damned if they did. So I think Parliament's got to be slightly careful about questioning the way the police have behaved. They should be independent of politics, just like the judiciary. And I think the way that Commander Yates behaved, I don't think it's right to bring that into question now.
So you wouldn't criticise him for some of the, for example, a dawn raid at the home of Ruth Turner, a member of the Downing Street staff, that's been criticised by some MPs?
Well, I'm sure people on the Labour benches want to try to get their image back up again as a result of this decision tonight. But I think politicians need to think twice before they get into second judging the actions of the police.
Well, let me ask you about the by-election then. Some of your supporters think you're pretty close. What's your assessment of how the by-election's going?
Well, I think the Liberal Democrats are going to do well tonight. I don't know whether we're going to quite manage to win it, but it looks like we're going to get a healthy second place. And when a lot of the commentators were writing off, telling us we were going to come a poor third just a few days ago, I think that's a tremendous success for the Liberal Democrats. And it looks like Mr Cameron, who's been talking up Conservative chances throughout the last 3 weeks, whose name even appeared on the ballot paper, it looks like David Cameron is going to have a very bad night.
OK, so Sir Mingus Campbell limps on.
I think Sir Mingus Campbell's going to sprint on. Let's remember he's a 100-metre record holder for this country, and he's still sprinting.
Ed Davey, thank you very much. Well, the Liberal Democrats think they're pretty close to victory here, but perhaps not quite there. We'll know, I guess, well, hour and a half or so.
Could be an interesting night. Jon Craig, thanks very much.
Well, joining us now from Sedgefield is our political editor, Adam Boulton. The by-election taking place tonight, Adam, and perhaps being dominated by the latest news for this Cash for Honours row. What's the mood there tonight?
Well, by-elections are always local affairs, and I don't think Cash for Honours, obviously with the news breaking since the polls closed, has had a direct effect, although certainly the Labour camp to a certain extent have their tails in the air. Not only is Tony Blair's seat appearing to stay in Labour hands, but also, of course, this vindication of him. Just quickly on the by-election, all the ballot boxes are in, the papers are all being sorted and verified, and we can see on the tables stacking up there that it looks like the Labour candidate has got the most votes. It looks like the Liberal Democrat is in the second place and the Conservative could be in third, which would be a bit of a reverse for them. There's also talk that the British National Party could have done quite well. That may be a story. But just quickly, let's just ask Graham Robb, who's been fighting the seat for the Conservatives, how nervous you are tonight.
Well, I've had a very positive campaign, and realistically this is a solid Labour seat. I always said it was a David and Goliath kind of fight, and we've put up a relentlessly positive campaign.
But if you were pushed into third place by the Liberal Democrats, that would be bitterly disappointing.
Well, it wouldn't be as bad as Hartlepool. You know, a couple of years ago there was a real disaster for the Conservative Party in the north in Hartlepool. We've been able to mount a positive campaign that's reached a lot of people. I'll be looking at the share of the vote tonight. And I think that in trying to tackle local issues and a local agenda, I have had a good reception. It has reinvigorated the Conservative Party structure in the North East as this by-election, and that's very important.
Although one does have to say it looks like down in the Ealing by-election the Conservatives aren't doing very well either. So it seems that the honeymoon is definitely over for David Cameron.
Well, David Cameron was very good. He supported me in this campaign, and he was jostled by Labour and indulged. There was a lot of the usual north-south kind of approach to things, and he bared up very well to that. William Hague was also very supportive. And so, no, I don't think the honeymoon is over. We may be getting into a more realistic kind of new politics, but it's a new politics in which the Conservative Party is reaching out again in the north and talking about the issues, and we've had a party structure being reinvigorated.
And as a party politician, would you be pleased or not if there are no prosecutions in the Cash for Honours investigation?
Well, I think we have to let the police do what the police have to do, and we'd best leave it to them. It's not a party issue what the police decide.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, that's Graham Robb here tonight for the Conservatives, saying that it's been a good campaign locally. So we are still expecting the result round about 1 a.m. We'll have to see how things go. Now, just getting back to that news that we have from Sky sources that tomorrow the Crown Prosecution Service is going to announce what it's going to do about the police file in the Cash for Peerages inquiry. At Sky News, we understand that it is going to be said tomorrow there will be no prosecutions. That'll be extremely good news for the 3 people who were arrested, still in the frame. Lord Levy, Michael Levy, the chief fundraiser for Tony Blair's Labour Party, for Ruth Turner, his Director of Government Relations, and also for Sir Christopher Evans, the industrialist and scientist and Labour Party donor. Basically, if there are no prosecutions, what it will mean is that the lawyers do not believe there's evidence directly linking offers of money to the award of peerages, or the offer of the award of peerages. And it will also mean that the Crown Prosecution Service have decided that in 2 secondary matters, the transparency of honours in response to Labour's own Act of 2000 and cooperation with the police and possible perversion of the course of justice, that there has not been the evidence there to justify a prosecution. Now that will be a major story in the British establishment. To a certain extent, there are bound to be criticisms of the police. We're already hearing them from some backbench Labour MPs for pursuing this inquiry over Tony Blair's last year in office and using quite tough tactics, dawn raids in one case on Ruth Turner. But there'll also be, of course, many people who will feel that the establishment has closed ranks again and that the Tony Blair's government have got away with it. So you will have to pay your money and take your choice, but it will definitely be the major political story tomorrow, whatever is announced, and we're expecting the announcement around about 10 o'clock. Now, here in Sedgefield, as you can see, the count is well underway, and it looks like Labour will hang on to a safe seat they've had for more than 70 years. Things are rather more exciting, in fact, down in Ealing Southall, the London by-election, and my colleague Jon Craig is there.
Thank you, Adam. Yes, great excitement here. You almost said Enfield Southgate then, didn't you? I don't think we're going to get a Portillo-Stephen Twigg moment quite here, but I think what we are going to see is a much closer result than last time when Labour held this seat with an 11,500 majority. It looks like Labour first, Liberal Democrats second and Conservatives third, which is the way it was in the 2005 general election, but it looks like being much closer this time. And of course, if it's looking like a good night for Tony Blair, it's looking like a bad night for David Cameron. Now, with me are 3 key players in this bitterly fought by-election contest. Closest to me is Lord Renard, the Liberal Democrats' chief executive, Stuart Jackson, MP, a former Ealing councillor for the Conservatives, and Parmjit Dhanda, who is the social cohesion minister in the Gordon Brown government. Let me come to you first of all, Parmjit. Looks as though you've just about done it, but your majority's well down if you have done it, and the Liberal Democrats, I think they might just edge it.
Well, bearing in mind the Tories between 1989 and 1997 didn't win a single by-election when they were in power, to be in our 3rd term and mid-term and to look to win 2 on the same night would be an incredible result. But I think most particularly this asks some serious questions about where the Tory party's heading. We gave the people of Southall a very firm choice, a choice between policy and policies that make a difference to them in their homes here in Ealing Southall, and a Tory party that was all about spin and PR, and I think they've made a very firm decision tonight.
OK, I should point out, they're pretty safe seats. I mean, obviously 18,500 in Sedgefield and 11,500 here. But let's hear from Stuart Jackson. You've heard the Labour charge there. You're all about spin. I mean, if you are third here, it is very bad for Mr Cameron, because after all, his name is on the ballot paper. David Cameron's Conservatives, it said. He's been here, what, half a dozen or so times? And after Bromley and Chislehurst last year, you're not looking too clever in by-elections, are you?
Well, this is a safe Labour seat and has been for 60 years. I was an Ealing councillor and I know full well that Ealing Southall has not returned a Conservative Member of Parliament since the war. And in fact, even in 1992, when we last won a general election, we were 7,000 votes behind in Southall. We went out to get as many votes as we possibly could. What this actually shows is that Gordon Brown bounce is a dead cat bounce. It's gone nowhere. Labour will scrape in tonight, possibly, and the Liberal Democrats, if they do come second, and it's a big if, this is the first by-election since 1989, 18 years, that they failed to win from a second place. Not a great result for the Liberal Democrat, and certainly calls into question Min Campbell's leadership of the party.
Lord Renard, you've just heard your leader there attacked by the Conservatives. I mean, you're not winning here by the look of it.
I think that's a bit cheeky for the party to come a very bad
when you had no
third in
leader,
both
you won a
by-elections.
by-election in Dunfermline.
All that's clear here so far is the Conservatives come a very bad third. And the May 2006 local elections here, the Tories were only 2% behind winning this seat. Now they've fallen back to the level they were at the last general election. They've made no progress on where they were with Michael Howard. It's clear there's a very big swing in both by-elections, Sedgefield and Ealing Southall, from Labour to the Liberal Democrats. That's a disaster for David Cameron and a blow to Brown.
Let me ask you, Stuart Jackson, about the controversial choice of Tony Litt as the Conservative candidate. A man exposed during the campaign as someone who only a few weeks earlier was sitting next to a Labour MP and having his photograph taken with Tony Blair and giving money to the Labour Party. That's a bit of a blunder, isn't it?
Well, he was subject to spin and misinformation. The fact
what was misinformation?
Well, the fact is that his company gave the money, not him personally, and frankly, he's a dynamic, charismatic candidate. He had a proven track record in the business community. He resigned from that and decided he wanted to devote his life to politics and serving the Conservative Party. And I think it reflects well on David Cameron that he wanted someone like that to come into the party and represent us here. And he did very well.
Parmjit, if you've won here and you've won comfortably in Sedgefield, are we going to see an early general election, do you think? Would you like to see one?
Well, that's a matter for the Prime Minister, but I think the important message of tonight is, you know, the Tories, Cameron in particular, has staked his reputation on their candidate, a guy that he personally chose and ran under the title of Cameron's Conservatives. I think the questions are really all about David Cameron tonight.
But if you have won here, you've only just squeaked in probably by, we don't know the majority yet, but it looks pretty tight, doesn't it?
Well, you're making these predictions, but you're also predicting a Labour victory.
Yeah, but
you never saw incumbent governments win elections between 89 and 97, and to win two on the same night, mid-term of a third term, I think that says a lot about people's opinions about Gordon Brown's leadership.
Let me put that point to both of the two opposition parties. Parmjit's making the point that here we have a Labour government that's actually winning by-elections. We all remember the Tories losing by-elections to both the Lib Dems and Labour during the John Major years in particular. Why do you think you haven't quite done it this time when you've won in Dunfermline, as we said, and you won seats off the Tories in by-elections in the 90s?
This was a very safe Labour seat, and Lib Dems only managed second place
you won
here
Brent
once
East, though, didn't you?
in the last 60
years.
You
won Brent East.
Indeed we did. And I think we'll have a big swing here too. And I think the Conservatives will be the main losers tonight. And this was an 11,500 Labour majority. I don't know if Labour will have a majority tonight. Certainly the big story of the night will be swings to the Liberal Democrats, an abject failure by the Conservatives, and disappointment for Brown's Labour.
Stuart Jackson, I don't see you as a hug-a-hoodie type of Tory. Where does this leave David Cameron's leadership? I mean, his name's on the ballot paper. The strategy doesn't seem to be working, either here or, OK, Sedgefield's an even safer Labour seat, but Bromley was a bad result for the Tories. You only just won there, and you appear to be in third place here. What's going wrong?
Well, I think it's going to be close. I don't think it's in any way like Bromley. The Liberal Democrats have failed. They are the political skip. It's where people just dump their policies, frankly. They're not supporting.
A lot more votes than
they're not supporting the Liberal Democrats. And as for Brown, this mock euphoria about an early election, I think this will blow it away.
Okay.
It will be a narrow squeak for Labour.
Let me ask you all very briefly about the big story of the night. Parmjit, looks as though Mr Blair and Mr Blair's friends and allies, Lord Levy, Ruth Turner, Christopher Evans, not going to face any charges over cash for honours. How welcome is that for you as a Labour?
Well, John, I never have, and I'm not going to comment on leaked reports.
OK. Stuart Jackson, Mr Blair and his friends appear to be in the clear.
I think it would be inappropriate to comment until we know the full facts.
And what about you, Lord Renard? Surely you've got something to say.
I can tell you it's clearly time there to be proper reform of the House of Lords under a democratic system and proper funding of political parties on a fair basis, so there could be no suggestion of linking place in the House of Lords, part of the legislature, with financial contributions to political parties.
Thank you. OK, thank you all very much indeed. Well, there you are, Adam. The Liberal Democrats, not surprisingly, have got the most to say about cash for honours. We think Labour have just about done it here. Looks like a pretty good night for the Lib Dems and a pretty bad night for David Cameron's Conservatives. Their name, not mine. David Cameron's Conservatives. That name was on the ballot paper. It looks as though they've come third. We don't know the margin yet. Back to you in Sedgefield.
I could almost say snap to you about that prediction. It looks here too as if the order is going to be Labour, Liberal Democrat, Conservative. And of course, that will be significant in the sense that the Conservatives were the runner-up in second place at the general election. So that will be a big boost for them. Now, in a moment, I'm going to be talking to the senior parliamentarian, Alan Beath, who, of course, is also a local man, and well, near local man, and has been supporting this campaign throughout. But before that, just on tonight's breaking news of the Cash for Honours inquiry and our belief that tomorrow it'll be announced that there are going to be no prosecutions. The man who, of course, made the complaint to the police is the Scottish National Party MP, Angus MacNeil, and he's been giving his reaction tonight to that speculation.
This has been leaked the night before, allegedly the night before the CPS were about to make their big announcement, and it looks like the CPS are an organisation not in control of events and certainly haven't covered themselves in glory with this at all. But this is a substantial point. We have to remember that we have had 16 months of investigation, 6,300 documents have gone from Scotland Yard to the CPS, and over the 16 months the Yard had liaised with the CPS to sustain this. So, the CPS have been involved all the way through, it seems, and now we're expected to believe that there was nothing at all in it, and I find that quite strange, I have to say. Just for the length of time and the amount of documents and the fact that CPS were involved all the way through. And I think the main question that has to be answered by either the CPS or the police whether what was the recommendation that the police had when they handed over their evidence to the CPS initially. I should point out at this stage that I have been quite pleased with the police and the way they've conducted themselves, and I've said this throughout the investigation. I didn't think they'd leaked at all. I thought they'd been very professional, but the CPS, in the manner of this announcement and the way the information has come through and various leaks have come, as I said, they're not covering themselves in glory. And I think the culture in the UK has certainly changed regarding honours, and I don't think we're going to see such strong links in the future between the cash and honours, the parallel links that I think your correspondent talked about earlier. We have to remember at the start of this investigation that 80 pence in every pound that came to Labour had come from people who'd been knighted or ennobled, so the connection was very strong, and it was on the basis of that the police began their investigation, and it was up to the police and the CPS to decide to continue that investigation. And I think we really have to know, I think the public has to know really what the police were recommending to the CPS and how the CPS also arrived at the decision they appear to arrive at, if the news we're hearing tonight is true. And perhaps if there's any difficulty here at all, it should be a matter for a jury of 12 honest people, good and true, to decide, perhaps, rather than the CPS.
Well, that was Angus MacNeil, who made the first complaint to the police about the alleged cash for peerages, actually clearly voicing his dissatisfaction. Well, joining me now here at the Sedgefield by-election is the senior Liberal Democrat, Alan Beath, Lord Beath. Just missed that. All right, I'm sorry, not yet. Not yet. We haven't handed it across. Well, anyway, we're not going into that. Alan Beath, before we come to what's going on here in Sedgefield, obviously we are just going at this stage on the basis of speculation, but a pretty informed speculation about what's going to happen. Just on the basic point of principle, if you have an investigation by the police lasting more than a year, should you feel that something's gone wrong if the Crown Prosecution Service say there's not a basis for prosecution?
It happens These things are notoriously difficult to prove. It's very frustrating for the police, so they've worked pretty hard on it. I think all the time they must have reckoned there was a serious case to answer, or they wouldn't have devoted the time and resources to it or continued with it. And as far as the public's concerned, of course, they see the strange coincidence of people who give a lot of money to the Labour Party ending up in the House of Lords. And similar things happened, of course, in Mrs Thatcher's day with the Conservatives. Indeed, one of hers is
just to be fair, there's the odd Liberal Democrat who main qualification appears to be financial generosity as well.
I dispute that, actually. But anyway, I think the public want the stables cleaned out. They want an end to this sort of thing. And they will be surprised that in circumstances like these, it doesn't give rise to real prosecution.
Is it your feeling that whatever happens with the prosecutions, that really the cat is finally out of the bag and that parties won't be able to carry on as they have carried on hitherto, as far as having this close correlation at any rate between financial support and honours?
I certainly hope they won't be able to, and I think the damage has been done, and the parties ought now to have seen how damaging it has been for them. And you've only got to look at the sort of money that swirls around the United States to realise it's not the kind of system we want here. So I chair a committee which has reported on better ways of doing these things, where you get some state help, but also you give much more emphasis to small donations by ordinary people helping to keep democracy going.
On the other hand, if you were Tony Blair, whose last year in government was overshadowed by this, or Ruth Turner or Lord Levy, who's been widely traduced by speculation and apparent leaks, you'd probably feel pretty angry as well, wouldn't you?
Well, I think that for everybody who's been named or fingered in all this process, it must be pretty frustrating as well. And they would, in any court case, they would want to mount their defence and have an answer to the charges that were brought. So in a sense, it leaves no proper resolution for them either. So I think it would be...
They've been exonerated if they're not prosecuted.
Well, yes, and anybody who's not found guilty is by definition innocent under our law. But clearly they've suffered, as you say, from all the speculation. And we've really got to put an end to this kind of thing and have a system of politics where not so much money is spent and what's raised is raised in smaller quantities from a broader base of people.
Now, tell us about Sedgefield. You, of course, from a little further north on the Scottish border there. It appears that the Liberal Democrats have overtaken the Conservatives into a good second place. How significant is that, do you think?
It's very significant for David Cameron because he said he was going to make a breakthrough in the north and end the Conservative desert and wasteland up here. He's clearly manifestly failed to do that. We are the challengers to Labour and we can mount a really effective challenge. In places like Newcastle and Durham, where we're now running the councils, we've shown that we can carry that through, not just to be a challenge, but actually to take over from Labour. And this is one of their strongest seats in the entire north. And here we look like doing very well.
Have you come second here before? I mean, you didn't last time.
No, we've never come in the entire history of this seat. We've never come second here. So, and we won't just do it. I think we won't just do it by a hair's breadth. I think we'll be a very good second.
Because, of course, there was at the time of the general election when Tony Blair stood, there was Reg Keyes, the father of a Iraq War casualty soldier. He got quite a lot of votes, and one might say that perhaps that's what's helping you now, that people have supported him. He's not standing. They've gone to the Liberal Democrats because of your position on Iraq.
Well, we'd be glad to have support for people who support us because they agree with the stand that we've taken. But it's not as simple as that. Of course, there's a whole stack of candidates here this time. You certainly weren't short of choices for people to vote for in this election. I think it does show that we are the challengers and the Conservatives are not getting anywhere in the north at all.
Just one quick question. A lot of people are saying the British National Party in their terms have done well, may well have saved their deposit tonight. From the point of view of your party, you'd regard that as something going wrong. What's gone wrong?
I think it's a very bad thing, but as you say, that's in their terms. We're still in a situation where if there's one seat in the entire country, and it's certainly not this one, where they might think of winning, that's about the maximum of it. I think it's quite dangerous to exaggerate the strength of a party which scrapes 10 or 11% here and there and much less in most places. But they are dangerous, and they're partly dangerous now because they conceal what they're really about and just try to look like people being local politicians when we know that their real agenda is a much more dangerous one.
Thank you very much indeed, Alan Beath, plain Mr Beath, for joining us here in Sedgefield. And certainly within the hour, if not quite possibly by 1 o'clock, we are expecting that the result will be declared here. Back to you.
Adam Boulton in Sedgefield, thank you. We'll be speaking.
Behind, because you'll see them, yeah, and then you'll see them all in a huddle.
Well, we're We're expecting the result of the Sedgefield by-election in the next few minutes, so we can join our political editor Adam Boulton now in Sedgefield. Adam.
Well, this by-election, of course, let's remember, was caused by the resignation of one Tony Blair, who stood down from Parliament after standing down as Prime Minister, partly so he could take up the international job as Middle East envoy, which he's done today. It's been a very, very quick campaign. That all happened less than a month ago. And as you can see here in Sedgefield, the count is pretty much completed. At the moment, in the corner of the room there, the candidates and their agents are gathering to have provisional figures read to them by the returning officer, Brian Allen. I have to say we've been able to see the votes stacking up in the boxes from up here, and it's pretty clear the way the result is going. In this very safe Labour seat, which Labour have held for 70 years, it looks as if Phil Wilson, local man with strong ties too to Tony Blair, has been re-elected fairly comfortably, although the share of the vote down to below 50%. We think around 43% for him. Now, the story of the night may well be that the Conservatives, who were in second place last time round, appear to have been forced into third place by the Liberal Democrats. We think the Liberal Democrats are actually at something like 24%. And then in third place, the Conservatives down around about 13%. Now, the interesting thing about that is that's pretty close to what they polled last time, but the swing has been to the Liberal Democrats here tonight, probably something that David Cameron will be thinking about pretty ruefully tomorrow when he also looks at what looks like a difficult result for the Conservatives in Ealing Southall, the other by-election tonight. The only other issue, and the total of 11 candidates, amongst the other 8 candidates, the only other issue is who gets 5% of the vote and saves their deposit. And on that, again, looking from the way the votes are stacking up, it seems to us extremely likely that the British National Party candidate has saved his vote. He looks to have got around 10%, and also a local businessman, independent, called Paul Gittings. He too is in saving deposit territory fairly comfortably. Looks as if all the other candidates have also fairly comfortably lost their deposit. So what that means is there's very little reason for a recount at what I have to say is one of the most efficient by-election counts I've witnessed in my long years doing this job. So I think we are probably simply a matter of minutes away from the official declaration of the result. May not be happening imminently in the next 3 or 4 minutes, but certainly I would expect beyond doubt within the next quarter of an hour we will get the result here, and it'll be that result will of course be Labour hold, as I was saying, the issues here being a good night for the Liberal Democrats, who certainly I think will be saying tomorrow those who were counting out Sir Mingus Campbell were counting too soon, and perhaps it's David Cameron who ought to think again about his strategy, because he did say, as we've had pointed out to us by his opponents, that there was a rebirth of the Conservatives underway in the north of England. This is not the evidence with which, frankly, you would back up that particular claim, and that obviously is fairly serious for him.
Main issues in this by-election?
Yeah, that's right. It's been not a high-profile by-election at all. There's been very little coverage by the national media. Indeed, one candidate was saying to me that he felt that the British National Party had got a very easy run. Now, one of the things about the British National Party is that their candidate, Andrew Spence, was a well-known local campaigner before he joined the BNP. He was involved in those fuel protests which gave Tony Blair such a scare in his first term. He's also flirted with both the Conservative Party and the UK Independence Party before ending up with the BNP. And one of the fascinating or disturbing things about this campaign is that if you look at the British National Party literature, it's extremely slickly produced. Some of it doesn't really have BNP in a particularly prominent way, and that the BNP, although to many people their defining issue is to do with race and immigration, they have concentrated on getting involved or seeming to be involved with other issues here, obviously the wider questions of immigration, housing, attacking the Labour Party, but in particular they've been holding vigils for soldiers killed in the Iraq War and identifying themselves as a patriotic anti-Iraq war party. So it's been quite a skillful campaign by the BNP, which has certainly unsettled and disturbed some of the traditional main party politicians who regard the BNP as not the sort of party they wish to encourage into mainstream politics, although the point should be made that the share of the vote here for them is probably going to be less than 10%, maybe 7 or 8%. A good result, but not undoubtedly a sensation, and obviously a long way behind the other three parties in fourth place.
And
that may be a bit of a relief for the Conservatives.
And Adam, Mr Blair only came briefly to campaign for his successor, didn't he?
Well, actually, he was here present quite a lot. Obviously, Mr Blair had a lot of other engagements, but he came up for the selection of Phil Wilson, and he, I think, was up a couple of other days since. He was certainly here earlier this week. So for the outgoing MP, quite unusual really to be such a presence. One of the things they've done tonight is they've decided that they don't want to in any sense overshadow the victory of Phil Wilson. So for example, even although Phil Wilson worked as an advisor to Tony Blair, that's not what he stresses on his campaign literature. He talks instead about his family ties to the constituency, going back to his grandparents, how he went to the local schools here in Trimdon and in Sedgefield, and how his father was 38 years a miner down the pit in the local pit. So that's what he's stressing, and indeed tonight they've taken a deliberate decision. Not just will Tony Blair not be here at the count, he's on his international envoy job starting in Portugal today, but also John Boulton, that very familiar mustachioed figure, the local party agent, has decided to celebrate at home tonight, or in the Trimdon Labour Party, his second home, I should say, the Trimdon Labour Club, rather than come down here because they want to talk about the future, they want to talk about Phil Wilson. They don't particularly want to have that overshadowed by Tony Blair, who was their MP, of course, since 1983, so for just about 24 years. They want to focus on someone now who'll be going down to Westminster to swell the ranks of Gordon Brown's Labour Party and to vote for him. So they've broken up now, as far as we can tell, in the huddle down there. Some of the minor party candidates just checking that one or two votes haven't gone astray. The other thing I can say is that no candidate tonight has scored the elusive nul point. All of them seem to have managed to get at least some of the voters backing them. And we can see down there that the Labour group are assembling. The lady in the red suit is Margaret Brown, the partner of the Labour candidate here, Phil Wilson, and a number of MPs here tonight. There's no doubt about it that it's been a smoothly run campaign by Labour, but they've been very anxious to avoid any slip-ups. There's always a potential for the by-election in these sort of circumstances to go badly there. And the man you see in the dark blue suit with the rosette and the red tie talking to his partner Margaret Brown is Phil Wilson, who I think now is minutes away from being declared as the new Labour MP for the constituency of Sedgefield. We're incidentally not in Sedgefield. We are in Newton Aycliffe, and just about the biggest issue of the campaign has been right on the doorstep of this building, which is the local leisure centre, because there is a shopping centre here attached, built in the last 20 years or so, which is dying because walking distance from it is a mega Tesco's Extra 24-hour superstore, which pretty much has meant that the business has been sucked out of the local shopping mall, and how to regenerate that has been one of the major issues of the campaign. Now I'm just seeing the returning officer there calling on his staff. I don't quite know what the delay is, and maybe now he's going to go on the stage and invite the candidates to come up. Of course, what we'll get will be the usual thing, the declaration from the returning officer, and then the speeches in descending order by the various candidates. Right, now we're seeing the returning officer, Brian Allen, go onto the stage. He'll tell us what's going on.
Could I ask the candidates and their agents to please accompany me on the stage, please?
Right, we're going to get the declaration in the next few minutes. The candidates and their agents now have been asked to go on the stage, so we're extremely close. There are, in fact, 11 candidates standing here tonight, and the interesting thing is that the major candidates, if I can call them that, are all going to come towards the end of the end of the declaration. So just to run through the candidates, we've got Stephen Gash from the English Democrats, putting England first. Paul Gittins, who is the independent, who looks a local man, a trader, looks to have saved his deposit. Tim Granger, Chris Hayne, Alan Hope of the Monson Raving Loonies, Toby Horton of UKIP, Graham Robb of the Conservative Party, Norman Scarth Anti-Crime, Andrew Spence BNP, Greg Stone Liberal Democrat, and Phil Wilson Labour Party. And we're reckoning the majority is just under 7,000.
Ladies and gentlemen,
here we go.
I'm now in a position to declare the result of the poll for the election of a Member of Parliament for the Sedgefield constituency. I, Brian Allen, being the acting returning officer at the above election, do hereby give notice that the number of votes recorded for each candidate at the said election is as follows. Gash Stephen Paul, 177.
English Democrats. 177 for English Democrats, putting England first.
Gittins Paul, 1,885.
Independent.
Granger Tim, 177.
Christian Party proclaiming Christ's Lordship.
Kane Christopher Michael, 348.
Green Party.
Paul Alan Howling Lord, 147.
Hey! The official Monster Raving Loony Party.
Horton Toby, 536.
UK Independence Party.
Rob Graham Michael, 4,082.
Conservative.
Scarth Norman, 34.
Anti-crime.
Spence Andrew, 2,494.
British National Party.
Stone Greg, 5,572.
Liberal Democrats there taking second place.
Wilson Philip, 12,528.
So Phil Wilson is the new Labour MP with 12,528.
And I do hereby declare that Philip Wilson is duly elected.
That is a majority of over 6,000.
Thank you. I'm honoured and I'm deeply humbled. To represent the people I grew up with and have lived alongside is the greatest privilege I can think of. I want to thank everyone who made this by-election run so smoothly, from the police, the returning officer and his staff, to the campaigners for all the democratic parties who, whatever our differences, believe in equal rights for every citizen of Britain. Most of all, I want to thank my family. They have put up with a lot over the last few weeks, and I want to say thank you to them. We've won our victory here tonight because of the success of New Labour under Tony Blair and our renewal with Gordon Brown. I'm proud of what Labour's achieved here over the last 10 years, with new hospitals ringing the constituency, rebuilt schools and 1,000 more businesses. 20 years ago we had 5,500 people on the dole in this constituency. Today we're on the verge of full employment. But being New Labour means never being complacent. I've never been satisfied until every family in Sedgefield has the very best. That's why we ran this campaign, not just on our record, but on the future. We set the agenda on making our town centre stronger. We campaigned to make sure our communities can take action against crime. I won tonight because families in Sedgefield know the difference between political scaremongering and real substance. They want affordable housing and a strong economy. They want even better schools and health care. That's why this election has been a disaster for David Cameron. People know he just can't be trusted when it comes to the big issues. Becoming an MP is a privilege and a huge responsibility. Community is at the heart of my politics, and we have an incredible community here. I've lost count of the people who've told me they remember me from school, or knew my dad from the mines, or know my neighbour or my
slow
friend.
hand clapping.
I owe everything to the people of Sedgefield, and I'll never forget that.
By the
and I promise you that I will give you my all.
representatives in the hall, and as you can see on the stage.
You can't miss me. It's right in Aycliffe Town Centre. I'll see you in the morning. I can't wait to get to work. Thank you.
So the new MP there, Phil Wilson, with a majority of 6,956. And now speaking second, pretty pleased man tonight, the Liberal Democrat candidate, Greg Stone.
This has been a fantastic result for the Liberal Democrats. Yet again, we have shown that we are the only challengers to Labour in the north. This was not a good result for Labour, and the result for David Cameron is a disaster. People who want an alternative to the discredited Labour government have turned tonight to the Liberal Democrats. I want to thank the returning officer, the election staff and the police for the running of this election, and I'd also like to thank my agent Ruth Milburn and the brilliant team who have worked so hard for me over the past 3 weeks and delivered a magnificent double-digit swing from Labour to the Liberal Democrats. I'd like to thank Min Campbell for his unflagging personal support for our campaign, and most of all, my personal thanks to the people of this constituency who have given their support to the Liberal Democrats so strongly tonight. I know from listening to people on the doorsteps that they have done so because we offered a positive alternative to a complacent and failing Labour Party who have taken the North East for granted for too long. People here deserve better. Better facilities, better health services, more frontline police, and above all, a strong representative who listens to their needs and speaks up for them in Westminster. For too long, this area has been taken for granted by Labour, but tonight this is changing. People have deserted Labour by their thousands because they have neglected this area. It's been the Liberal Democrats who have set the pace and made the challenge, and Labour have suffered a serious blow. Can I congratulate the new MP for Sedgefield on his election? As he takes up his new duties, we shall be watching to make sure that residents finally receive the service and the regeneration that they have missed out for so long. Let me repeat that tonight's result is a disaster for the Conservatives. It shows that people are not impressed with the politics of spin, and they haven't forgotten the damage that the Conservatives did to the North East. They haven't been taken in by David Cameron's PR. It's been Min Campbell's Liberal Democrats who set out a clear direction for Britain, for the North East, and for Sedgefield constituency. I'd like to congratulate Phil again and offer my best wishes to him and his family, but I warn him not to ignore this warning shot from the people of this constituency and not to ignore the local issues that matter so much to local people. Thank you very much indeed. It's been a privilege and an honour to stand for election here in Sedgefield. Thank you.
Greg Stone there for the Liberal Democrats, who doubled his vote, had the biggest increase in his vote from about 12% to about 24%. Now the Conservative candidates
and the Leisure Centre staff have kept us going tonight. Thank you very much, lads. I'd like to thank my agent Paul Boulton, his staff, my volunteers and my family. I too want to congratulate Phil Wilson. I do believe he is a man of integrity, and I do believe he's run an honourable campaign. And as a resident of this constituency, he's now my MP, so I'll be keeping an eye on him too. The Conservative vote today has held firm. In fact, it's increased slightly. So it is a good result for us, because we can prove we are still in business in the North East, and as we regenerate our party, we'll be back in business even more. It's also a good result for a positive campaign. I've remained relentlessly positive throughout this campaign and campaigned on local issues. And that's been possible because David Cameron allowed the northern campaign of the Conservatives under William Hague to start to regenerate and revigorate in the region. And also possible because he allowed Conservatives to talk about local issues in a positive way. There is a big agenda here in the Sedgefield constituency. New health centres needed in Newton Aycliffe, the new town centre. We've got the agenda needed for Herworth School, for affordable homes and post offices. You know, local people said to me throughout this campaign that they don't want a Prime Minister in Sedgefield anymore. They want a Secretary of State for Sedgefield. Let's hope that Phil Wilson can be that man. Thank you.
And now it might just be worth listening to what the BNP candidate's got to say. Andrew Spence.
Well, personally, I'd like to thank Brian Allen, my election agent, Mark Walker, my party organiser, Adam Walker, and all my other team. Particularly, I'd like to thank the Northern Echo for its coverage. The Labour government has been a cancer in the heart of this country for too long, eating away at this proud and noble country. Well, we are the cure for that political cancer. Tonight has shown that this country will no longer be taken for granted. It will no longer be told what it can and cannot say. The British National Party has now injected pride, self-dignity, patriotism back into the hearts and minds of the British people, without it being looked upon as being politically incorrect. This party that says goodbye to PC and hello to common sense. It is now time for the British people to stand up for our rights and beliefs without the fears of persecution. This is the start. This is the beginning. Now is the time to bring this country of ours back from the brink of European dominance. Our backs are against the wall. Our only path is forward, and with the British people at our helm, we will carry it forward. We have only been in this constituency for 10 months and 2,500 votes. It's now time for the British people to experience honesty,
so Andrew
justice,
Spencer there for the BNP in fourth place, as he says, 2,494 votes. But the winner, Phil Wilson here, had 12,528. And of course, Tony Blair had nearly 60% of the votes. What we're actually seeing from Labour tonight is something over 40%. But as they're pointing out, the drop in their vote here has been a lot lower than in a number of other by-elections which Labour has fought, notably in Hartlepool, nearby here on the northeast. And we're now beginning to be joined by some of the candidates to tell us about the result here tonight, which is a Labour hold. The new Labour candidate, Phil Wilson, holding this seat for the Labour Party. Of course, a man who knows Tony Blair well, and we're hoping that we're going to be joined by Mr. Wilson here now. Yes, he's just coming now to speak to me, so we'll have a quick word with him, and then we'll hear from the second place candidate, the Liberal Democrat. Mr. Wilson, congratulations to you tonight.
Thank you.
Did you ever have any doubt? I mean, this is a very safe seat, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I've lived here all my life and I would never take people of Sedgefield for granted. So we obviously work very hard for every vote in the constituency, and I'm pleased to say that we've returned with a substantial majority.
You just said down there, we heard you, that you felt that you were building on what Tony Blair did for the country and for the constituency. Do have to say to you that your share of the vote is considerably down, so it's building downwards, is it?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, we've had a great success in the last 10 years in this constituency. You know, I remember, I've lived here all my life, I remember back in the 1980s when we had 5,500 people on the door. We're now on the verge of full employment. The constituency is ringed by new hospitals or hospitals that have been refurbished. The education results are, are really excellent. So I think we've got a lot to be proud of in this area. And I just want to see, continuing to see an improvements in healthcare and in the education service that we've got.
What does it mean that the Liberal Democrats overtook the Conservatives? I mean, is that just a by-election freak, or do you read more into it?
I mean, this constituency, don't forget, in the past, since 1983, it's always been Labour and then very far behind the Tories. And for the first time, the Liberals have actually taken over the Tories. So I think this is not a very good night for David Cameron.
What about the BNP saving their deposit here?
Well, the BNP have their way of campaigning as well, which we're not very pleased about. And these communities around here, steeped in traditional Labour values, etc. And I think it's a concern which we're going to have to address after the election.
Now, tell us about yourself in politics. You've been in politics a long time, mostly local politics, although you did, I think, work for Tony Blair for a bit.
Yes.
What do you see your ambitions now as an MP?
Over the next few years, I just want to concentrate on being a very good, hard-working local MP for the people of Sedgefield, and that is my agenda over the coming years.
We noticed Mr. Blair's not here, nor's Jon Boulton. I mean, have they been trying to keep out of your hair?
No. I mean, Tony's obviously got other things to do at the moment, which is just very important, and I think he's going to use the skills that he's honed in Northern Ireland and trying to resolve the problems in the Middle East, and the best of luck to him.
Well, congratulations to you again, Phil Wilson, and joined now by a gentleman in second place, Greg Stone for the Liberal Democrats. Congratulations.
Thanks,
to you. You think it's worth congratulations?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's been a very good result for the Lib Dems tonight. We've clearly shown that the Lib Dems are challengers to Labour in the north. There's an awful lot of disillusionment with Labour in this constituency, and we've capitalised on that, and David Cameron's Conservatives have been nowhere, frankly.
A lot of people were saying tonight in these two by-elections, Sir Mingus Campbell's head was on the block to a certain extent. Is it off the block now?
I never thought it was on the block in the first place, to be honest. I think that we've shown in both in Ealing and here in Sedgefield that the Liberal Democrats are alive and kicking and challenging Labour very hard, and I think it's the questions that need to be asked of David Cameron's leadership. When I was knocking on the doors here, an awful lot of Conservative supporters here were saying, we don't trust David Cameron, we're going to switch to you this time.
Is it fair to say, though, and it seemed really from the tone of both your speeches tonight, that really almost the Labour Party and the Liberal Democrats are almost an alliance, locking out others?
I don't think that's the case at all. There's clearly a lot of hostility from Labour directed towards the Liberal Democrats. They saw us as a threat. They called basically a 2.5-week campaign here, the shortest they could possibly do it to avoid anybody else getting a start on them. But we've shown we've achieved an 11% swing here. We've shown that people are disillusioned with Labour's record here. People felt that the previous MP was too busy with other issues to sort out things like the town centre, police numbers, and the closure of local hospitals. And people felt that they had been taken for granted here in the constituency.
Fewer than you, obviously, but we've got the BNP in fourth place. Why do you think that proved to be attractive to a number of people?
I'm disappointed by the fact that BNP have polled votes here tonight. I don't think they offer any answers to people in Sedgefield. It's a constituency which is 99% white, and I feel that the solutions they're purporting to offer...
I mean, they would say they're broadening out onto other issues.
Well, I don't think that's the case at all. I think it's just a knee-jerk reaction, an anti-politics vote, and I think it's very regrettable that they've polled well tonight.
Well, congratulations to you on your second place.
Thank you, Adam.
So, to recap, here we are now in Sedgefield with, not really a surprise, I think, a safe Labour seat is a Labour hold for Phil Wilson. And you can see from the result, though, that more or less there was a swing, if you analyse these things arithmetically, from the Labour Party to the Liberal Democrats, but nonetheless a pretty comfortable majority there of just under 7,000. And joining me now is Hilary Armstrong, a senior member of the party who's been closely involved. Satisfied tonight?
Yes. This is actually a remarkable victory, given what has happened in by-elections in recent years. This has been a very good campaign. It makes it clear that the strategy that the Labour Party has embarked upon, the transfer of power from Tony Blair to Gordon Brown, has worked in terms of the public perception, and the public have given an endorsement to Gordon Brown's government this evening, but also to a very good local candidate, Phil Wilson.
It was a very, very quick campaign. I think less than 4 weeks between Mr Blair stepping down and this election here tonight. Why the indecent haste?
I think they should all be like this myself. No, I mean, inevitably, if you'd not had it now, you'd have had to wait until late September. Schools finish tomorrow, and it really did seem that it was right, given that you've got a new government, that things are moving to get the by-elections in as quickly as possible, because there were 2 by-elections. And the other thing about Sedgefield is that Tony really felt they need a representative. They need to actually make sure they've got someone who they know is fighting for them locally.
Perhaps someone who can do a little bit more locally than he was able to do.
Indeed, and that's what he said to them, that he now wanted to step down because he was going to be busy and they needed clear attention.
If you look across the northeast, which you know very well, is the pattern of politics changing? I mean, the Liberal Democrats, do you see them still as a coming force?
Well, tonight has shown that the Tories are nothing like the coming force that they wanted. And this really has been a severe blow to David Cameron. I mean, if I was being really nasty, I could say he's done worse than Michael Howard, because under Michael Howard's stewardship of the Tory party, they came second here at the last general election. And Cameron has made a great fuss of his northern strategy, and it hasn't worked. But I also think the Liberals will be very disappointed with tonight's results.
They seem very disappointed.
Well, they really did work very hard, and they were putting stuff out this morning that said they were only 3 points behind us, and that you know, they were neck and neck. They weren't anything like neck and neck when the votes were counted. So you know, I'm content that Labour is still listening to and working with the people in the northeast, and that we will continue to do that so that we can continue to earn their confidence and represent them effectively.
Well, here we are mid-term, and it appears the 2 by-elections tonight have in fact been held by the Labour Party. Does that make you pretty confident about the general election whenever it is?
Whenever it comes, I am confident that we can win a 4th term. The government has shown it is capable of renewal. One of the reasons I stood down was in order to demonstrate that young folk are there waiting to come through. That is happening, and in ideas we are streets ahead of the other parties in terms of understanding the issues of the next decade and finding the right things to actually face those issues. And on that basis, whenever the election comes, I'm confident.
And just personal preference, I mean, would you like to see a snap election, say, in the next 12 months if Gordon Brown can clearly win it?
I am really pleased. I'm not in a position to take those decisions. And
whenever, no, you're a politician. Which would you prefer?
I've got too much on my mind to think about things like that. Whenever it comes, I'll relish it and get stuck in.
OK, just get a very final quick word from the Conservative candidate. Got to go to Ealing Southall in a moment, but just tell us, not a great night.
Well, look, a politician's share price is his share of the vote, and the share of the vote went up here in Sedgefield.
Very marginally.
Yeah, disappointed to
How much was it?
A tiny bit, but it did go up, and we held our own. Look, a couple of years ago, we were hammered in the Hartlepool by-election. Not this time. We held our own and increased a bit, and that was against a relentlessly negative Lib Dem machine. This guy had nothing positive to say about anything or anyone. There were leaflets on blue paper going to Conservative areas, made-up opinion polls, quotes taken out of context, and attack. I've tried to be positive, and it's received a good
So you fight another day?
Oh, the Tory party fights another day, and it's got a good platform to come back from.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. So there we have a reaction from the three main parties here in Sedgefield. The order tonight, safe seat held pretty comfortably by Labour. Second place taken by the Liberal Democrats. Third place for the Conservatives. Let's now go to the other by-election where they're still waiting for the result tonight. And my colleague Jon Craig is down in London in Ealing Southall.
Thanks, Adam. Well, it looks as though the 1, 2, 3 will be the same order here in Ealing Southall, with Labour ahead of the Liberal Democrats in second place and the Conservatives pushed into third place. That's the same as it was in 2005, although we expect the result to be much closer this time. Now, a few moments ago, we saw the Labour candidate, Virender Sharma, arrive with the Labour Party Deputy Leader, Harriet Harman, wearing a resplendent red jacket. Labour look pretty confident. They think they've won here. Some sources think they may have won by 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 votes. Liberal Democrats say no, nothing like as big a majority as that. Well, it does look as though the Conservatives, despite putting Mr Cameron's name on the ballot paper, David Cameron's Conservatives, it says, are going to be pushed into third place again. Well, let's talk to the man who's masterminded their campaign, Conservative Party Vice Chairman Grant Shapps. You put a lot of effort in here, a lot of visits from your party leader, and yet you've come third. What's gone wrong?
Well, we were already third, of course, and one very good thing has happened. We now have Conservative councillors in Southall as a result of this campaign, which is great news. And actually, unusually in a by-election, the third party, the one in third place, hasn't been squeezed. So it looks to us as if our vote has held up. We may well have actually been the party to increase our vote by the most of any of the parties.
Yeah, but come on, a few days ago you were confident of winning this, weren't you? Mr Cameron's made several visits. William Hague's been here. You put David Cameron's Conservatives on the ballot paper. You had a Bollywood candidate. OK, turned out he'd been to a Labour fundraising event. That didn't help. But it's been a bit of a disastrous campaign, a bit like Bromley and Chislehurst last year when you only scraped home.
Well, hold on a minute. One thing, I don't think I ever told you or anybody else that we were about to win the campaign. We go out and we fight for every single vote that we can get. And one of the great results of this is, rather than being squeezed, we've actually ended up, I think, probably expanding our vote. We'll have to wait to see what the final result is. We think it's all pretty tight and very close. And the other thing is, the Lib Dems have always, since 1989, come from second place to winning the seat. This is the first time we've blocked their progress because we've put up a real fight in a seat where actually nobody would even think we would have a chance ordinarily.
But in terms of a Tory fight back, this seat here was crucial. We've had the Brown bounce in the polls, poll at the weekend in the Sunday Telegraph, Labour 40%, Tories 33%. You really needed to show that you were bouncing back here, and you're not bouncing back, are you? You're getting crushed by the big clunking fist.
Well, here we are with 5 councillors in Southall, now all Conservative. Never ever happened before. I think you have to go back to the 1920s to find Conservative councillors in Southall. And so that's a result, and it's something which will actually stay here afterwards. One other thing which has just happened in a neighbouring Ealing seat at a by-election this evening is that we've won there as well. So
come on,
very good news.
These are small consolations, aren't they? This is the big prize here, and you've not won the big prize. You've not even come second. Now the knives are going to be out for Mr Cameron this summer, aren't they? It's going to be a long, torrid summer for your leader.
You know what?
And now 2 poor by-elections.
Hold on. You know what? We'd love to win every single poll we ever went up for.
Well, when they were in opposition, they were winning by-elections.
This is probably our best. We'll have to wait to see the results. We think this might look like our best result in terms of increased vote for about 10 years. So actually, it looks like we're doing pretty well on the results. We'll have to see what the final figures come in like. Meanwhile, Min Campbell has his first occasion since 1989 where his party has failed to come from second to first in a by-election. I think he's got a lot of questions that people will be asking him tonight.
OK, you're going to quote some facts and figures at me. You polled in the last election here 21.6% of the vote, so you're starting from a pretty low base, aren't you? With all the money, all the resources, all the effort you've put into this campaign, Conservative MPs being sent down here. OK, it's only a few stops on the tube from Westminster after all, and it's a pretty sorry return, isn't it?
Well, I think
and it does question the whole Cameron project.
Hold on a minute. Every party's put a lot of work into this, and every party sent MPs down here to campaign. If the result is that we end up adding more to our vote than any other party, then presumably you'll agree with me that we've fought a pretty spirited campaign.
Well, it may be a spirited campaign. I'm not going to agree or disagree with you, but the fact is you're still in third place. It's a crushing disappointment.
A, we don't know whether we're in third place yet. We have to actually wait to the results. And B, actually, the party that adds most of their votes is usually considered to have had a pretty good election. So if that happens, then presumably we'll all be saying, well, that wasn't a bad election as well, if we managed to actually increase our vote on last time.
Where does David Cameron go from here? His tactics don't seem to be working here in Ealing Southall, do they? A sort of seat where you might hope to do well.
Well, you say that. We haven't held Ealing Southall since 1949, so I'm not sure it was a seat that anyone expects to see turn blue overnight. But we've made great progress. 5 Conservative councillors right in the heart of Southall. Can only be better things down the line, I would say.
Up in the north, I know you'll be concentrating on what's happening here, but up in Sedgefield, it's a poor performance there. Mr Cameron and Mr Hague talk about trying to make inroads in the north. The inroads, they're just not happening.
You see what
doing
happens.
no better than you were under Michael Howard, William Hague and Duncan Smith.
You see what happens in by-elections is the third party in a contest will always get squeezed. That's the way that by-elections work. What's interesting about tonight here, and from what I've seen, I've only just glanced at the figures in Sedgefield, is we've increased our percentage of the vote in both. So, not a bad night when you consider the position we're coming from in each case.
Let me ask you about the Conservative Party candidate here, and those cheers may be him arriving, I'm not sure, I can't see. But you picked a candidate here who was perhaps picked for his glamour and his good looks rather than... He certainly hadn't been a Conservative Party member very long, and then we discover he'd been to a Labour Party fundraising event, had his picture taken with Tony Blair.
What most people...
Bit of a blunder, wasn't it?
Well, what most people don't know is he was at a Conservative Party fundraiser 2 weeks before. He worked for a radio station who went and covered those events. In fact, they were broadcasting from it, so, that was part of his job and role. Actually, he had a conversation with Stephen Pound at that fundraiser where Stephen Pound, who's a Labour MP, said to him, you know what, you'd make a great MP. To which he replied, I might consider standing, but I'm afraid, Stephen, I spat for the other side and I'm a Conservative. Now, that's never come out, has it, until now? And so the truth is, if you were to, I think, cut Tony Litt open, you'd find his Conservative through and through as much as the next Conservative MP. I think he will be an excellent Conservative MP one day as well.
OK. Right, Grant Shapps, thank you very much. He's not going to be the MP here tonight, we're pretty sure about that. Well, we hope to be speaking to Tony Litt at some point, and of course the other candidates. We're some way off the result, but it sounds as though one or two of the candidates are arriving here. But more news from here a little bit later. Back to you.
John. Well, the other by-election is at Ealing Southall in West London, and we're joined there with Sky's chief political correspondent, Jon Craig. John, are you there?
I am, yes, and we're expecting the declaration here around about 2:20 a.m. is what we've just heard, and we are expecting a similar result to Sedgefield here, although not by such a big majority. It's pretty tight here, but I think we can confidently predict that Virender Sharma will be the new MP for Ealing Southall. He's the Labour candidate. The Liberal Democrats, we think, are in second place, but the Tories claim that they and the Lib Dems are neck and neck. There's a real battle going on between the Tories and Lib Dems for second place. A lot at stake, of course, for David Cameron and Sir Mingus Campbell, because third place really is not just a wooden spoon here, but will raise a lot of questions about the leadership of the party that comes third. If David Cameron's party are pushed into third place, then the knives really will be out for Mr Cameron. He's invested a lot in this campaign, and similarly, if the Liberal Democrats come third, there'll be more trouble for Sir Mingus Campbell. But of course, this by-election is happening against the backdrop of the dramatic news that later today the Crown Prosecution Service is expected to confirm there will be no charges in the Cash for Honours investigation. A lot of MPs here of all the parties, Labour and the Conservatives, haven't got too much to say, with the exception of Stephen Pound, who we heard from a little earlier. There will be anger on the Labour backbenches that this inquiry has taken 16 months and has ended with a decision to bring no charges against Ruth Turner, who worked in number 10 with Tony Blair, Lord Levy, the chief fundraiser, also Christopher Evans, the Labour donor. It looks as though we are going to see a good day for Labour tomorrow, with Mr Blair and his allies cleared on Cash for Honours, and it looks like Mr Brown's, the so-called Brown bounce, is going to continue with the safe holding of two by-elections, albeit with pretty much smaller majorities. But Labour won't worry too much about the majority. All they care about is winning these by-elections, and we know they've won Sedgefield comfortably, and we think they've won here. The candidate, I don't know if you can see there's I don't know if you can see that V sign, that is Virender Sharma there, look. He is the man we believe has won. Almost certainly Mr Sharma has won. He's the new MP, and we expect the declaration about 2:20.
Now, John, we know the Tories performed badly in Sedgefield, and as you say, it's a bit touch and go tonight as to where they'll end up. What do you think David Cameron might be reflecting on tomorrow?
Well, I think his critics within the party will accuse him of bad judgment by choosing the controversial candidate Tony Litt. Now, this is a man who has been described as having Bollywood good looks. He's the son of a man Avatar Litt, who runs a local radio station called Sunrise Radio. Mr. Litt was brought in by the Tories. He'd only been a member of the party a very, very short time. And of course, last weekend came the embarrassing disclosure that he'd attended a Labour Party fundraising event, donated some money, and had been photographed with Tony Blair. Although I spoke to Avatar Litt tonight, Tony Litt's father, and he explained to me that it wasn't particularly a personal donation. It's a company. He was attending on behalf of the company, and he was saying that Mr. Litt has attended party political functions at all political parties.
And what will it mean for the Lib Dems if they get that second place today?
Sorry, I missed your question there. I was just being told, I think we can confirm now that Labour have won this seat and that the Liberal Democrats are in second place. So I'm assured, sorry I missed your question, I'm assured it's Labour first, Liberal Democrats second, and the Tories in third place. We don't know the figures yet, but that's the 1, 2, 3. So what was the question, sorry?
Well, I was just asking what it'll mean for the Liberal Democrats if they come second.
Well, I think they'll be relieved at coming second. I mean, let's not forget, the last general election, let me just remind everyone, that this seat was held by Piara Cabra, a veteran Labour MP, 82 when he died. He'd held this seat since 1992, and he had a majority of 11,500. Now, the Liberal Democrats were second with 24.4% of the vote, and the Tories behind in third place on 21.6% of the vote. So it was pretty close between the Liberal Democrats and the Tories in second and third place last time round. And it looks as though a similar pattern has emerged tonight, although we expect the Labour majority to be much less than the 11,500 of last time. And there is this real battle going on between the Lib Dems and the Tories. The Lib Dems will be mightily relieved that they're in second place here. They had hoped at one stage that they might win it, but Labour have done enough here. Labour have brought in a machine, if you like, of experienced party workers, MPs like Tom Watson, who's the Labour whip, who successfully managed the Birmingham Hodge Hill campaign a year or so ago. And Labour have done enough here. They've had plenty. It's got a big membership, the Labour Party here in Ealing Southall, and they've done just enough to win it, or possibly win it by 2 or 3 or possibly even 5,000. One Labour supporter told me he thought they'd won by. Obviously, big relief for them, for Gordon Brown, of course. Gordon Brown's been Prime Minister for just 3 weeks. It would be embarrassing if he'd lost a by-election, but it looks as though Mr Brown is, well, I think we now can confirm Mr Brown has safely negotiated these 2 by-elections. I don't think, there was never much doubt about Sedgefield. That was a rock-solid Labour seat. There was always a slight possibility that Labour could lose this one, because only a few years ago that Labour lost Brent East, a seat that was formerly held by Ken Livingstone to the Liberal Democrats, to Sarah Tether. And of course there have been some by-election shots. Dunfermline, right up in Gordon Brown's backyard, was a seat that the Liberal Democrats won at a period when they didn't even have a leader. Charles Kennedy had gone and Mingus Campbell had not even been elected. So they have got a good record in by-elections, the Liberal Democrats. They haven't done well enough to win here, but they'll be relieved at pushing the Tories into third place.
And will this Labour hold, do you think, bring an end now to some of the unquiet and somewhat controversy that's been surrounding this seat?
Well, some people say this has been the dirtiest by-election they've seen since the Littleborough and Saddleworth by-election back in 1995. Now, that was a campaign where Labour were accused of dirty tricks, smearing the Liberal Democrat, accusing him of links with drugs. Now, here, there's been a fierce row. We revealed on Sky News last night that a row in which the police were brought in to investigate the leaking of the postal vote figures to a Daily Telegraph website. and the police were investigating because that, of course, it's an offence to leak the figures and also to publish them. The Telegraph had to take them off their website, a political blog called Little and Large. Then there were accusations from the Conservatives that Labour were guilty of dirty tricks by using Labour supporters to pose as ordinary voters to harangue Mr Cameron during one of his visits here. It's been a bitterly fought campaign, but then by-elections always are, and there's always a lot of rancour, a lot of ill feeling. There's always a lot of accusations about dodgy leafleting and dodgy tactics, smear tactics and so on. There's been plenty of that, but at the end of it all, Mr Sharma, the Labour candidate, has won. We're not quite sure of the margin yet. There are 12 candidates in all. Liberal Democrats' candidate is Nigel Mackay. They claim he's a local man, of course. And the Tories have this controversial figure, Tony Litt, who appears to have been pushed into third place. As you can see, they're all bunching up together on the stage now. It looks as though they may be posing for a photograph. Those orange stickers, posters are obviously Liberal Democrat placards being held up there. The Liberal Democrats, as ever, have fought a pretty spirited campaign, but they haven't done enough here. It's a Labour victory. There'll be much relief, immense relief in Downing Street. Mr Brown particularly will be very relieved. Harriet Harman is here, the new deputy leader. She arrived with the Labour candidates about an hour or so ago now. Harriet Harman we hope to be speaking to as soon as this result's declared. She'll obviously be very pleased. She looked pretty pleased when she arrived because, of course, it reflects well on the new Brown-Harman leadership of the Labour Party, the fact that they've proved that they're efficient, they can run by-elections and that they can negotiate potentially tricky by-elections, which is what they appear to have done here. I'm just waiting to see what's happening up on the stage there. The candidates all seem to have come down, actually, off the stage. That gentleman on the stage, I think, is a council official, I think. The result is very close. Last information we had was 2:20 for this result. We are expecting it. I think slightly frustrating that most people in the hall seem to know what the result is, and yet it's not been officially declared. The one thing we don't know is the figures, how close it is. And as you can see, it looks as though lots of people are having their photographs taken. I can see all the Labour. There's the Labour banners and placards being held up there. Lots of photographs being taken, I guess, for local papers and whatever. And I expect what will happen soon is the candidates will go back on the stage. Sorry, yes, Tamsin.
Yes, John, a quick question while we're waiting on the cash for honours row. Is this any coincidence that this has just come out as soon as the polls close?
Well, clearly, I think that the Crown Prosecution Service wanted to wait until after these two by-elections. I think if they'd have made an announcement whilst people were still voting or the day before voting, I think a lot of the political parties would have been very cross about that and accused them of possibly trying to influence the result, cast Labour in a good or bad light. I think it's a sensible move by the CPS to wait until after the heat of battle in these by-elections and make their announcement tomorrow. Of course, there's one more week. Parliament's still got one more week to sit before the summer recess. They break up on next Thursday, 26th of July. So there'll be plenty of opportunities for MPs to have their say in Parliament next week about this decision, which we know now is going to be no charges against either Lord Levy or Ruth Turner or Sir Christopher Evans. There'll be relief amongst the Labour High Command, particularly amongst Mr Blair's supporters. I've talked to a lot of them in recent weeks. They were angry at the length of time it was all taking, the fact that Tony Blair was being smeared as they saw it. But then on the other hand, Mr Blair's opponents believe that perhaps he hadn't been entirely straight with everyone because, of course, he was interviewed 3 times, and the third time Downing Street didn't release the information until after he'd stepped down as Prime Minister. So bitterness and rancour on all sides. Now there's slow hand clapping starting here. I suspect this is frustration at the delay in announcing the result. But there will be a lot of, I imagine there will be a lot of questions in the Commons next week about the whole CPS inquiry. One of the things we also expect to happen is that the Public Administration Select Committee of MPs, that's an all-party committee, that was looking into cash for honours and then suspended their inquiry after Yates of the Yard went along to see them last year and asked them to wait until after he'd completed his inquiries. They're now expected to resume their inquiries, and they are almost certainly going to call John Yates, the Assistant Commissioner from Scotland Yard, to give evidence, probably in public, I guess, and it may well be that a lot of the facts of this case will come to light, possibly in this parliamentary inquiry and in a report. What we don't know yet is how much information will be made available by the Crown Prosecution Service tomorrow, or perhaps whether we have to wait before John Yates and possibly Ruth Turner, Lord Levy. I know that the committee has already asked John Yates and Lord Levy in particular to go and give evidence. Lord Levy didn't want to, but once he's cleared, he may well feel that he's got a lot to get off his chest. He may want to go and... I was going to say he may want to go and appear in the Commons. Well, you can probably see as much as I can, Tamsin.
A little
clearly,
cheer there.
The candidates are all... Yeah, I don't know who it was or what it was for, but I think the announcement is imminent, but then I thought the announcement has been imminent for some minutes now.
Perhaps they were cheering for the new Prime Minister, Gordon Brown. It's been a good night for him, obviously holding the seat in Sedgefield, and as you say, tonight in Southall, he'll be happy today.
Yes, indeed, yes. I mean, with by-elections, I mean, you don't expect to get a big thumping majority like the 18,000 or so that Tony Blair had in Sedgefield at the last election, and the 11,500 here in Ealing Southall. Labour never really expected. I'm just being told 1 minute till the declaration, Tamsin. Labour never really expected to hold this with a majority of 11,500 again. I mean, I keep repeating that in Brent East, Labour had a majority of 11,500, the same figure, and they lost that to the Liberal Democrats a few years ago when Sarah Tether pulled off that spectacular win. So anything really under sort of 12,000 can be vulnerable in a by-election. We've seen some huge shocks over the years, some enormous swings. I'm thinking back to the major years between 92 and 97, when both the Labour Party and the Lib Dems had some spectacular by-election victories. But Labour haven't had too many shocks in the last few years. Apart from anything else, there haven't been as many by-elections in recent years as there were, say, a decade or so ago. I mean, Piara Cabra was pretty unusual, still being in Parliament in his 80s. He was 82 when he died a few weeks ago, and he was the oldest MP in the House. He didn't become an MP until 1992, so he was what? He was in his late 60s when he became the MP for the seat. Before then, in this constituency, Sid Bidwell was MP here till he was 75. He was eventually deselected. But MPs are generally much younger now than they used to be, so you don't get so many by-elections. I mean, it's sad for us because we enjoy the sport of these occasions. But I think the political parties are all quite glad that they have fewer by-elections. Certainly the party in power, because they're a nightmare, because you've got everything to lose if you're the governing party. Whereas, of course, if you're the opposition party, one of them, you can embarrass the government by pulling off a spectacular victory. But that doesn't appear to have happened here. In fact, we're certain that Labour have won this by-election. We're just waiting for the result. I'm at the back of the hall, as you can probably see, and I hope it's not being announced and we're missing it. I don't think so. I think what's happening is just that the candidates are being told privately. As you can see, there's a huddle at the front of the hall. This is most peculiar. I have covered by-elections for many, many years. As Adam was saying earlier on, we're a couple of by-election veterans, and normally what happens is there's a huddle and then the announcement is made up on the stage, but this huddle is going on forever. It's also been slightly unusual, this by-election, because, well, I don't know if one of the parties is calling for a recount. My colleague Gary Honeyford is going to make some inquiries now. Normally you get the announcement up on the stage. This has been slightly unusual because they didn't want us to film the counting going on inside the hall throughout the evening. We were doing all our interviews outside in the foyer of Ealing Town Hall. But as soon as I can establish exactly what is happening, I will tell you. But for now, there is a hold-up. Everybody's standing around looking very frustrated, and my colleague Gary Honeyford is coming towards me and hopefully has some information for me.
While we're waiting, John, David Cameron wanted an A list of candidates, keen on bringing women and people from ethnic minorities. Will this really be a knockback for him then?
Right. I'm told that they've all moved off. Sorry, Tamsin. They've moved off the stage apparently because of placard waving. This is most unusual. Let me just ask my colleague. We are going to get the result up on the platform, aren't we?
Yeah, the candidates are not there. They're about to be brought onto the stage.
Right. My colleague Gary Honeyford, who's been to inquire what's going on, tells me we will get a proper old-fashioned style declaration, if you like, up on the platform. This has all been a bit of a muddle here. This has been very poor. How not to run a count. The returning officer, well, they've not had a by-election in this constituency for a long time, but he's let this drag on, and it's... Anyway, you were asking me about David Cameron, I think.
What I was going to say,
Cameron, if he is in third place. If he is in third place, which is what we believe, the knives will be out. They will question the choice of candidates here. Mr. Litz, who's not been in the party for very long, his critics will say that 1 minute, are we being told? I think I'm being told 1 minute now. Somebody looks as though they're testing the microphone. Now,
weren't we told that before, John? 1 minute?
Yeah, I know we've been told that before. Now, this gentleman is Mr. Dara Singh. He is the acting returning officer. He's also the chief executive of Ealing Council. That, I think, is the lady mayoress in the red... that's one of the candidates in the other red jacket. So we are seeing the candidates coming up on the stage now. That is the Green Party candidate. That's Sarah Jane Edwards, the Green Party candidate. There is Mr. Sharma there. Now, you can't see Mr. Sharma. He's just behind the returning officer at the moment. In some ways, he looks a little bit like his predecessor. He's short in stature and not too much hair up top. Looks a bit like Piara Cabra, slightly, obviously a younger version of him, the former MP. You know, handshaking going on there, up on the stage. That looks like Tony Litt, I think, on the left-hand side of the picture there. I think we are going to get the declaration any minute now. It's been a long time coming. Anyway, to complete the answer, yes, bad night for Mr. Cameron. He'll be criticised for the whole selection process and the procedure here, and obviously for the way he's run the campaign, because he sent Grant Shapps, a party vice chairman, in here with the best will in the world. Grant Shapps is an inexperienced MP. He was only elected 2 years ago. But I think we have the declaration. Is Mr. Singh about to make the announcement? I'm just getting some more information now. You heard it here first, Tamsin. I'm told these are the approximate figures. Labour vote is round about 15,000. The Lib Dem vote is round about 10,000. And the Tory vote is round about 8,000. Now that compares with last time. The Labour vote then is down from nearly 23,000 to about 15,000. The Lib Dem vote is down about the same. Sorry, the Lib Dem vote is down from about 11,500 to about 10,000. And the Tory vote is down a couple of thousand from about 10,000 to 8,000. So we believe Labour has won this seat with a majority of around about 5,000. Labour has polled, we are told, approximately 15,000. The Liberal Democrats are second with about 10,000 votes, and the Tories have about 8,000 votes. The turnout is official. I can tell you the official turnout. That was 43.1%. 43.1% down on the general election. We are awaiting Mr.
John,
Singh.
John, how surprising is that majority for a by-election?
Good evening, everybody. I'd now like to announce
I'll let Mr.
the
Singh make the
results of the
announcement
election.
now, I think.
Before I do so,
we'll talk afterwards.
I would like to thank all of the election staff, the elections team, and all the people working throughout today and throughout the evening for the sterling work that they've done in delivering an election in 3 weeks from start to finish. So, well done. And now to the formal proceedings. I, Dara Singh, being the acting returning officer at this election for a Member of Parliament for Ealing Southall, give notice that the number of votes cast for each candidate was as follows. Nigel Buckay, Liberal Democrats, 10,118. John Sidney Cartwright, the official monster raving loony party, 188. Satvinder Singh Shagar, commonly known as Sati Shagar, the English Democrats putting England first, 152. Salvinder Singh Dillon, Respect, Peace, Justice, Equality, 588. Sarah Janet Edwards, Green Party, 1,135. Kuldeep Singh Grewal, Independent, 87. Surindapal Singh Lit, commonly known as Tony Lit, David Cameron's Conservatives, 8,230. Yaqub Masai, Christian Party proclaiming Christ's Lordship, 280. Jasdev Singh Rai, Independent, 275. Kunata Tiruventkatachari Rajan, commonly known as KT Rajan, UK Independence Party, 285. Virendra Kumar Sharma, the Labour Party candidate, 15,100. Gulbash Singh, Independent, 92. Therefore, I declare that Virendra Kumar Sharma has been elected to serve as a Member of Parliament for the Ealing Southall constituency.
It's confirmed Labour home by about 5,000. Labour hold Ealing Southall by about 5,000.
I would now like to ask Mr Sharma to say a few words.
And this is the new MP for Ealing Southall.
Thank you.
Virendra Sharma.
This is a great result for our new Prime Minister, Gordon Brown. And it is a humiliating rebuke from Britain's most diverse constituency to David Cameron's Conservatives. In ways without precedent, David Cameron staked his reputation on this by-election. And the people of Southall and Ealing have given Cameron their verdict tonight. We do not trust the Tories to represent us. They do not stand for us. I am humbled by the trust put in me. I will work hard to repay it. We fought this campaign on local issues. More policing, better transport, investment in schools and young people, local health care, a greener Ealing. The people of Ealing and Southall have shown tonight that Labour policies are right. It's policies that win elections, not slick PR. But there is still much to do. I will set to work immediately to repay this trust in me. But first, I must thank those who made it possible. I want to say thank you to the people of Ealing and Southall who voted for me, and to every one of the thousands of people I have met on the streets and doorsteps during the campaign. There is no better place than here. This is my place, and it is my home. And I will work every day with all of the communities to make it better. Thanks to the returning officer and all their staff for their organization and efficiency tonight. Thanks to the police for ensuring the safe and fair conduct of polling day. To my agent and all those who have worked so hard on the Labour campaign. To my opponents who have fought and lost with honor and dignity. Though I would like to say one thing. The Liberals put that I'm 72 years old, but for just correction, I'm 60, and they might be confused with their own leader, Ming. And finally, to my wife and my family and my father, without whose support during a quarter of a century of public service, I would not be here tonight. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
So there we have victory speech from Virendra Sharma, the new MP. Supporters at the front of the hall. There he is, waving. It looks as though we're now going to
Right,
hear
and that
from...
draws the proceedings to a close. Thank you very much.
Tamsin, we are spared the speeches.
Oh, why is that, John?
Tamsin, we are spared those speeches from all the other candidates. I noticed that Sedgefield earlier on this evening, there were about a dozen speeches from all the candidates. There are 12 candidates here, and well, perhaps I'm being grossly unfair, but I must admit, whenever you come to a by-election, you hear the winner, you want to hear what the winner's said, but you don't really want to hear the speeches of the people who only polled sort of 200 or 300 votes. Let me just confirm this result then. Labour have polled, this is Virendra Sharma, 15,188. In second place, Nigel Bakai, 10,118. That means a Labour majority of 5,070. Now I have the winning candidate, Mr. Sharma, sir. No, he's not going to come and talk to us yet. Well, let me just tell you what he said in his speech. Mr. Sharma said in his speech that this was a great result for Gordon Brown. Gordon Brown, let's not forget, only been Prime Minister 3 weeks and 2 days. A great result for Gordon Brown, said Mr. Sharma. A very bad result for David Cameron, who'd invested an awful lot of capital and effort into this campaign. And I have where you can probably see Harriet Harman, a very happy deputy leader of the Labour Party, who I'm going to carry on talking while we get a microphone for Harriet Harman. Harriet Harman has been in the job, what, 2, 3, 4 weeks? Yep. Not very many weeks, and the new Gordon Brown, Harriet Harman leadership of the Labour Party, 2 tricky by-elections. They've won Sedgefield comfortably. They have won here in Ealing Southall comfortably by 5,000 votes. The exact majority is 5,070, and so any second now I'm going to talk to Harriet Harman. Harriet Harman, congratulations, you must be pretty pleased. I mean, these by-elections, notoriously tricky. I mean, I remember Labour lost Brent East, which was a similar 11,500 majority. You've won here quite comfortably. Why do you think you managed to win here when in previous occasions you've had some dreadful slip-ups in by-elections?
Well, I think we're delighted with the result, and I really want to congratulate Phil Wilson up in Sedgefield and Virendra Sharma down here, and it gives us real confidence for the future. And I think one of the things that I find really striking about it is how bad it's been for the Tories. They've fallen from 2nd to 3rd place in Sedgefield, and they trailed behind the Liberals here despite David Cameron. I don't know whether you realise that he put his own name on the ballot paper.
I do, yeah.
On the ballot paper, it was David Cameron's Conservatives.
Yeah.
And I think that the people don't know where they stand. They don't know what he stands for. So, and they're backing us. So it gives us real confidence for the future.
So do you think the fact that your friend Gordon Brown is the leader of the Labour Party means that you're in better shape than when you had Tony Blair as your leader? All the polls suggest it. The Brown bounce. We've not just seen it in the polls. We've seen it here in Ealing Southall.
I think there is a new spring in the step of Labour supporters and Labour Party members. They worked really hard in this campaign. They wanted to give Gordon Brown 2 by-election victories, to send 2 new Labour MPs to Westminster on Monday, and that's exactly what they've done.
Well, how did you run this campaign then? Because we just heard Mr Sharma there talk about local issues. Did he talk more about local? What about, I mean, did he talk in the campaign? Did you as a party talk about all the things we've heard from Gordon Brown in the last few weeks, or was it just a local issue campaign?
Well, I think both in Sedgefield with Phil Wilson and down here in Ealing Southall with Virendra Sharma, it was about a good local candidate, but with the backing of a national party, the Labour Party, knowing where it's going and looking to the future. So I think it's that combination that did it. And also hard work by Labour Party members who've really got their tails in the air, they're confident, they want to get out there and put the message on behalf of the good candidate in the party nationally. So we'll just wait and see what the Tory turmoil is tomorrow. I know you shouldn't gloat, but I can't resist it.
I was going to say, it sounds like a bit of gloating. How's the mood in the party changed since you've changed the leader?
Well, I think that, people are thinking that we've turned over a new page and can look forward to a confident future. We've seen new priorities set out. We've seen Gordon Brown giving our democracy a bit of a spring clean, starting with the House of Commons. So I think there's a lot of change, and it's change for the better. 2
obvious questions. Number 1, have you ever smoked cannabis?
Oh, I'm not commenting on that, I'm afraid, tonight.
Well, plenty of your cabinet colleagues have.
I am not commenting.
OK, then the second question, obviously, is we've learned tonight that Tony Blair's allies, Lord Levy, Ruth Turner and the donor Christopher Evans, are not going to be charged by the Crown Prosecution Service. What does that mean for the Labour Party and the Labour government?
Well, I don't think there's been any formal announcement yet. I think there might be going to be an announcement tomorrow. And here is Virendra.
Come and join us. Many congratulations. You're live on Sky News, Mr Sharma. Now,
Thank you.
You said just then this is a great result for Prime Minister Gordon Brown, bad result for Mr Cameron. Surely it's a good result for you, isn't it, rather than for Gordon Brown, and a bad result for Mr Cameron?
No, I take it that it's a good result for the government, particularly as a new Prime Minister Gordon Brown.
Why? I mean, you're the one who's been doing all the work here.
But the credit goes to the government because it is their policies, their vision for the future has certainly encouraged the local people to vote for the Labour Party.
You did say, however, in your speech just now, that you felt this campaign on local issues. What was your message that helped you win here? Was it the new Prime Minister, or was it local issues?
It is a combination of new Prime Minister's vision for the future and my track record as a community worker and the local councillor for the over 25 years, where the people paid back on those 2.
Now, I've heard people say this has been a very dirty by-election campaign, dirty tricks. There was a row over leaked postal vote figures yesterday, claims that some Labour activists have been posing as ordinary members of the public and haranguing David Cameron. What's been going on here?
Whatever happened, now the people of Ealing and Southall constituency have put full trust in me, and I'm elected as a Member of Parliament, and I'm looking forward to serving the Ealing Southall constituency people in the future.
And what are the big issues you're going to take to Westminster?
First of all, I will be taking a cross-rail issue so that the traffic and the environmental issues are raised on the platform, and make sure that in future the investment comes to my constituency.
What about, I mean, the Iraq war was clearly an issue here at the last general election. Is the aftermath of Iraq still an issue in this constituency, the large Asian population?
No, people have accepted that whatever happened in the past, now we need to look for the future, and the government's policies and the practices for the future has accepted by the people.
And what about you? What's your view on the war?
I was opposed to the war, but I also accepted that was the past and we need to go forward, and that's the future we have to look at.
Do you think Mr Brown should consider bringing the troops home from Iraq pretty soon?
I think that we need to look at with the international communities together to find the best ways and the right time when the local people in Iraq are able to accept the democratic setup, and then when the right time comes to bring the troops home.
Did it help you, the fact that Tony Blair was no longer Prime Minister? Did people say to you, I'm glad that Tony Blair's gone and you've got a new Labour leader?
No, I don't think so. Tony Blair was the Prime Minister. He decided to step down. Now we have the new Prime Minister, and we will work with the new Prime Minister, and the people have accepted him as a future leader of the Labour movement.
And it's probably not the right time to ask, but what happens to you at the next election? Because there's boundary changes here. There's not going to be an Ealing Southall seat, is there?
I'm just got elected now. I look forward for the future, and when that right time comes, I will comment on that.
OK, well, it's very many congratulations. Well done. And look forward to seeing you in the House of Commons. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Talking to Sky News. Thank you very much. Well, there we have the new MP for Ealing Southall, Virendra Sharma. Just to recap, Labour have won this by-election comfortably with a majority of 5,070 over the Liberal Democrats. David Cameron's Conservatives, that was the name they gave themselves in this by-election, came a third, another 2,000 votes behind the Liberal Democrats. So there will be a Tory inquest later today. However, Gordon Brown, Harriet Harman and the Labour Party are celebrating. 2 out of 2 tonight. They've won Sedgefield and they've won here in Ealing Southall.
Jon Craig in Ealing Southall, thank you very much. Well, we can go back to Jon Craig in Ealing Southall now, where Labour has held on to its parliamentary seat. John, is that Ed Davey with you? Hello.
Tamsin, well spotted. We've heard from the winners. We've got the runners-up here, or rather Sir Mingus Campbell's Chief of Staff, Ed Davey MP. Well, as you predicted, I guess, you are in second place, but you didn't quite pull it off. I mean, this could have been another Brent.
Well, we had a big swing from Labour to the Liberal Democrats. We had a swing from Conservative to the Liberal Democrats. So it's clear that we, although we didn't get the first place we'd have liked, we really made real progress here in Southall. And I think that sends the party in really good stead. When you remember that in Sedgefield, we pushed the Tories into third place and got a very good second there. Overall, it's been a very good night for the Liberal Democrats.
I'm just checking the figures, actually. You polled 10,118 votes, which is down about 1,500 on the 2005 general election.
Proportionally, because it was a much higher turnout in the general election, proportionally our share of the vote has actually gone up. So it really is a very good result.
OK, let's bring in Nigel Bakai. Welcome, Nigel.
Hello, thank you.
Didn't quite do it.
Well, halved the majority.
You halved the majority, yes. Now, you fought this seat last time, didn't you, in 2005? You halved Labour's majority. What do you think it needed, perhaps, for you to pull off a spectacular triumph like Sarah Tether did in Brent a few years ago?
Well, I mean, we fought a marvellous campaign. It was really only 2.5 weeks since I was selected. So in that short space of time, we fought on the issues that really mattered to the people of Ealing and Southall. And we fought a really positive campaign, and that was reflected in a good result.
Now, I'm going to be cheeky here. Do you think perhaps if the Liberal Democrats had a more dynamic leader, someone like Nick Clegg or even Ed Davey or perhaps even Charles Kennedy, who's very popular, you'd have done better?
Ming led from the forefront in this election. He visited Ealing and Southall 8 times. He showed real passion and commitment, and he led from the front in this campaign, and I was proud to be alongside him in this campaign.
But it wasn't enough, was it? I mean, the point I make is that perhaps if you had a more dynamic leader, you might be doing better in by-elections.
Well,
I take you back to Dunfermline. When you had no leader, you won a by-election.
Well, the real disappointment in this election should be for David Cameron. He put his name on the ballot paper. His Tory party came third here and in Sedgefield. I mean, the question should be asked about his credibility. Ming Campbell was an absolute star in this election. The Liberal Democrats are completely rightly upbeat over another excellent by-election performance.
OK, well, thank you. Well done, coming second. There we have, that was Nigel Bakai. I don't think we've anybody else at this stage. We'd like to talk to some Conservatives. I don't know if they're all... now I think I can see the Conservative candidate. Is he coming towards us? If you don't mind, bear with me for a second, Tamsin. I think Mr. Litt is on his way to us. Just to recap those figures then, Labour polled 15,188. Liberal Democrats were second, 10,118, so that's a Labour majority of 5,070. And Mr. Litt, who's just coming to join us, was third place, 8,230. Tony Litt, commiserations.
Thank you.
What went wrong? Was it going to a Labour fundraiser?
No, not at all. Look,
my campaign's always been about the positives. It's never been about the negatives, and it doesn't matter what the other parties were doing, attacking me for something which was a non-entity as far as I was concerned. I've always been a Blue, always will be a Blue, and I'm not talking about being a Chelsea fan or a West Ham fan or whatever it is. I'm talking about being a Conservative supporter all my life.
You're fairly inexperienced, though, aren't you? I mean, you've only been a member of the party a few weeks. Do you think perhaps you're a bit too inexperienced for a high-profile by-election?
No, I don't think at all. I think we gave a great performance. I mean, I think it's human nature always to be disappointing if you don't win. But I think, you know, for a race which has always been a one-horse race, it's no longer a one-horse race. The majority has been cut to 5, and between first and third, it's about 5,500, 6,000. So, you know, and that's got to be good for the people of Ealing and Southall, and that's the positive.
Now, what sort of Tory are you? Are you a hugger hoodie David Cameron style Tory? Are you a hang 'em and flog 'em, or where do you stand? Because the reason I ask is because clearly the Cameron brand of Conservatism is not going down too well in constituencies like this. You've come a fairly poor third, really, haven't you? You're way behind Labour in a seat that you really hope to win.
No, I don't think we've come a poor third. I think percentage-wise, we've increased our share, and I think the figures will show that once the statisticians have worked that out. So I don't think that's been the case at all. And regards to David Cameron, I mean, David Cameron's been here on a number of visits to me. I think his policies are correct, and you know, I'm firmly behind David Cameron's. And David Cameron's Conservative Party is the 21st century party, and it is the party which is going to be governing at the next general election. I firmly believe that. It's moving in that direction. And I think today's been a positive result for the Conservative Party. Yes, we haven't won it, but I mean, percentage-wise, we're moving in the right direction.
Is there anything that you think perhaps you might have done differently or better over the last 3 or 4 weeks? Perhaps not gone to the Labour event, but I suppose you didn't know you were going to be the candidate then, did you? No,
look, that was part and parcel of my job. The previous week I was, as an MD of a radio station, not anything to do with political. Well, 9 days earlier I was at an independence ball where David Cameron was the guest speaker. And I've been at events where there's been ministers and shadow cabinet ministers and international ministers from other countries. That was part and parcel of my job. I think we've fought a brilliant campaign. We've brought a campaign to Ealing Southall which gives them options, and Labour can no longer be complacent in an area like Ealing and Southall anymore. Their majority has been slashed, and it's no longer is a one-horse race. And I think that is fantastic for the people of Ealing and Southall. For a constituency that means so much to me, I'm really pleased for the people of Ealing and Southall.
What were people saying to you when you were out campaigning? What were the issues that were concerning them?
Crime, drugs were a huge issue for them, and then they had other issues regarding facilities and the NHS. And you know, the one thing which I was really pleased about, people said, Tony, the one thing great about you is it's really refreshing that you've only fought a positive campaign. And I'm really pleased about it because that's kept the integrity of Tony Litt and the Conservative Party.
Are you going to have another go at the next general election?
Well, whatever it is, it'll be for the Conservative Party, and this won't be the last you'll see of Tony Litt. I will be standing again.
Here, though?
Well, that's to be decided after a conversation with the party.
You need to go and rest that voice, I think, after a busy campaign, don't you?
No, it's been a fantastic campaign. It's been a fantastic experience, and the support I've had from the Conservative Party is fantastic. And I think the way that David Cameron and his team are moving the party forward with Syed Lavasi being moved into shadow cabinet is showing full representation of multicultural Britain today. It's fantastic.
Tony Litt, thank you. Commiserations. Thank you very much for talking to Sky News. Well, there we are. We've heard from the 3 main candidates here. We've heard from Virendra Sharma, who's won with a majority of around 5,000, from Nigel Bakai, who came second for the Liberal Democrats, and from Tony Litt, the controversial Conservative candidate, another 2,000 behind the Lib Dems. So a bad night for Mr Cameron, despite the upbeat views of Mr Litt there. It's Labour who are celebrating tonight. They've won this seat by about just over 5,000, 5,070. Their majority halved from 11,500 last time round. They've won safely, and they've won in Sedgefield too. And as the candidate said here, the winning candidate, when he made his speech, it's been a good night for Gordon Brown.
Jon Craig, Ealing Southall, thank you very much.